Good morning, everybody. I hope your week has gone splendidly. Sorry for not posting over the past week and a half. My parents just left this morning after visiting us out east all week, and it was such a good treat to see them. The weather held up really nicely. I'm super sore from playing pickleball all day yesterday. I have a sunburn on my forehead, and I got roasted by both my mom and my dad. But no, I had a wonderful time, and it was great to see them. The best part of having your parents around as an adult, and I'm sure you'll agree, is all of the wonderfully home-cooked meals. Don't get me wrong, I owe my life to prepackaged salads, but having food you haven't had in years is something else. Like meatloaf, for example. I forgot how much I loved meatloaf and ketchup. I'm a Midwest boy. Speaking of those two, they are both retired and enjoy traveling when they're able to, and I can't remember if they've been to Iceland once or twice now. My brother and maybe sister have also been, so I get confused. But everyone has only positive things to say, and I only say this now as our story takes place in the beautiful country of Iceland. Today, I bring you Iceland's only serial killer. My name is Eli, and this is Murder in the Morning. My sources for today come from Britannica, Wikipedia, Murderpedia, and the others I will put down below. Iceland has an extraordinary history, and with our story taking place in the 1500s, I would like to give you just a bit of that context. According to Wikipedia, in geological terms, Iceland is a young island, roughly 16 to 18 million years old. For comparison, it's estimated that other volcanic islands, such as the Faroe Islands, have existed for about 55 million years, the Azores, which belong to Portugal, for about 8 million years, and Hawaii for roughly a million years. The geological history of Earth is divided into ice ages based on temperature and climate, if you believe in that. And the last glacial period, commonly referred to as the Ice Age, is thought to have occurred roughly 110,000 years ago to about 10,000 years ago. And while covered in ice during this period, Iceland's ice falls, fjords, and all of their valleys were formed. For a long time, Iceland remained one of the world's last uninhabited larger islands, the others being New Zealand and Madagascar. Iceland was first discovered by Nadad, one of the first settlers in the Faroe Islands, who was sailing from Norway to the Faroes, but lost his way and drifted to the east coast of Iceland. There's a whole other argument that Irish monks discovered it first, but I'm not even going to get into that side. The first Norseman who deliberately sailed to Iceland was Rafna Floki Vilgarosen. Floki settled for one winter at Borostrand, and after the cold winter passed, the summer came and the whole island became green, which stunned him. Realizing that this place was, in fact, very habitable, despite the horribly cold winter, it was full of useful resources. Floki restocked his boat, returned east to Norway with knowledge of a new wonderful land. The first permanent settler in Iceland is usually considered to have been a Norwegian chieftain named Ingolfur Arnarsson and his wife Halveig Froðadóttir. According to legend, he threw 2 wooden carved pillars overboard as he neared land, vowing to settle wherever they ended up. He then sailed along the coast until the pillars were found in the southwestern peninsula, now known as Reykjaneskagi. There, he settled with his family around the year 874 in a place he named Reykjavik, which translates to Smoke Cove, probably from the geothermal steam rising from the earth, and this place eventually became the capital and largest city of modern Iceland as we know. English and German merchants became more prominent in Iceland at the start of the 15th century. Some historians would refer to this time as the English Age of Iceland, due to the prominence of English traders and fishing fleets. What drew foreigners to Iceland was primarily fishing in the fruitful waters right off the coast. The next 100 years, the 16th century, is referred to as the German Age, due to the prominence of, yes, German traders. The Germans did not engage in much fishing themselves, but they owned fishing boats, rented them to the Iceland people, and then bought the fish back from them to export them to Europe. Our story today, or at least parts of it, hinges on this era and age of trading in Iceland, where people were now aplenty. Quote, Snæfellsnes Peninsula is known for its stunning beauty and fascinating mysteries. The magic of the nature of Snæfellsnes makes it the backdrop to the beginning of Jules Verne's novel Journey to the Center of the Earth. The glacier there being the opening into a mythical world existing inside of the Earth, which is full of monsters and adventure. But Snæfellsnes itself is also the site of one of Iceland's most horrendous murder mysteries. The terror of Iceland's only serial killer, Axlar-Bjorn. Nobody knows how many he actually killed, but most accounts put the number of deaths at least 18. Some speculate the number was far higher. Bjorn is believed to have been born in 1555, the youngest of 3 siblings. His nickname or adopted name, Axlar-Bjorn, would come later on in life. According to legend, his mother, Sigriður, had an unusual craving during the pregnancy, a thirst for human blood. And his father, who loved his wife with everything he had, is said to have indulged her and helped her by letting her drink his own blood. According to medievalist.net, at the time it was believed that blood had magical properties. Several saga heroes of that era drink blood to gain extraordinary abilities. Sigurður, the famous dragon slayer in one of those sagas, acquires wisdom and knowledge by tasting blood, and later, the meat of a heart. Böðvar, in another saga, transforms his mate from a coward to a daring and brave warrior by making him drink some blood of a monster that he had since vanquished. However, after Bjorn's mother drank the blood, she is said to have had nightmares, quote, so horrible they could not be described. And when she confessed these dreams to one of the farmhands, she said she feared the child that she was carrying would be, quote, some kind of monster. And boy, was she spot on. After all, what would you expect from a child who fed on human blood? Sucked the devil's teat, I guess. As a young boy, Bjorn proved to be unruly and quite difficult to control. But other than that, he didn't show any signs of being different from other young men. When he was 15, a friend of his father, Omar Porfleifsson, aka Omar the Rich, offered Bjorn to come live with him on the farm Nor. In exchange for room and board, Bjorn was to help out at the farm. I read that Bjorn's father had previously worked with this Omar the Rich, and the two had grown close. It wasn't uncommon at the time for poorer families to send their children off to live and work with wealthier families, and this was the case with Bjorn. Quote, it was decided that Ormur would foster Bjorn, as was common practice to support needful families during hard times. Bjorn was well cared for in his new home and became good friends with his now stepbrother, Guðmundar, end quote. One day, Bjorn decided to take a nap rather than go to church. So far so good. While he slept, he dreamt that a stranger approached him with a plate of meat. The meat was delicious, and Bjorn ate one piece after another. When he had eaten 19 pieces, he suddenly fell ill and stopped eating. The man then told Bjorn to go to the top of a nearby mountain named Axlar-Bjorn, where he would find an object that would make him famous. The next day, Bjorn woke up excited and anxious to run to the top of this mountain, find this object, and, quote, become famous. So, he quickly climbed this mountain And at the top, he found an axe that would soon become his obsession. Shortly after this find, one of the farmhands at the farm Nor, a boy Bjorn's age, disappeared. Axlar-Bjorn later confessed that he had murdered the boy with his brand new axe and buried him in a pile of manure. This would mark the start of a decades-long, terrifying killing spree. According to the Icelandic Times, after the passing of Ormur the Rich, his son Guðmundar's wealth and heft grew over and well beyond his father's. He built his adopted brother, or his stepbrother, the farmstead of Oxel, which Bjorn would later draw his nickname Axlar from, or Axlar, after settling there with his wife Pordis. Visible from the main road, the farmstead's charming exterior attracted unwary travelers, many of whom would become Bjorn's prey. In addition to fulfilling his homicidal tendencies, he's also believed to have, or almost certainly believed to have, stolen valuables and horses of his victims, mainly due to the couple's quite lush lifestyle, which contradicted their meager yearly earnings. His exact crimes are unfortunately unknown, as his victims were either drowned, buried, or thrown into a nearby lava field where their bodies would disappear forever, and for decades his horrors continued. Quote, Bjorn's compatriots had long suspected that something was off on the farmstead, but his stepbrother's influence, power, and money resulted in lack of further investigation. And so, Bjorn was left undisturbed to practice his atrocious acts for years, brutally murdering men, women, and children. Sources vary as to what actually led to the discovery of these horrors in the year of 1596, but it appears that one of his intended victims got away and alerted the authorities. Some sources claim that the survivor was a mother of two who barely escaped with her life after losing both of her children to a rampage of Bjorn's. Others tell of traveling siblings that stayed the night at the farm Oxel, and before escaping, the brother hid in the sewage as Bjorn butchered his sister in front of him. End quote. To this day, like I said up top, the exact number of Bjorn's victims remain unknown, although many sources agree on that specific number of 18, from valuables, horses, bones that were found, or simple assumptions over the years. Bjorn himself only admitted to 9 murders, but like I said, investigators' findings suggest that there were many, many more. The Icelandic Times says that Bjorn named his wife as an accessory, and so they were both sentenced to death. Bjorn's execution was gruesome and slow. First, his limbs were shattered and broken with a sledgehammer before being cut off. Then, they chopped his head off and strung all of these parts up on poles. His private parts were then cut off and tossed on his wife's lap. Her execution was postponed as she was actually pregnant at the time, and there are no records to conclusively say that her sentence was ever enforced or not. However, later that year, she did give birth to that son she was pregnant with, who she called Sven Skadi Bjornsson. He inherited his father's evil nature and was hung in 1648 when found guilty of a rape attempt. He had spent his life wandering the country, committing numerous heinous crimes, and the same fate was dispensed to his son, named Gisli Roker Svensson, who was also hung for crimes later in life. And that, my friends, is the story of Axlar-Bjorn, Iceland's only serial killer, and his nasty bloodline. I think that might be the furthest back I've ever gone for a murder. What a time to be alive. I just hope y'all weren't too bored with the history stuff right away. I think it's kind of interesting to give you some background, dive into it a wee bit. Sorry if it felt like I was talking faster than usual. I don't know if I was or not, but I did record this episode before my parents got here last week, and then for some reason, instead of hitting save, I freaking hit the delete button and just wiped it from all existence. So I was a little bit salty earlier, but maybe this second round was better. Anywho, also on the Icelandic site that I had mentioned, they write, amazingly, there is an inhabited farm called Oxel standing right where these horrific events took place. And if you are so intrigued, a visit to this historical site is available and well worth your time. Another interesting place nearby is Laugurbrekubing, the place of Bjorn's execution. Would love to visit that. Anywho, thank you all for listening, and stick around for a bonus story after the music if you would like to. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you. Bello! I hope by the time this episode comes out that this case will be resolved. That was a bad intro. But it can't hurt to help spread awareness. Like I said, this is the lowbrow half. Titled, Police Hunt Former Cop After 2 Women Are Found Dead and a Child is Abducted. Written by Patrick Smith of NBC News. Quote, police are urgently searching for a man after 2 women were shot dead and a 1-year-old boy was abducted in Washington state before possibly fleeing to the Mexican border. Elias H., 39, a former police officer, is, quote, armed and considered dangerous and is likely to commit more crimes. He was due to appear in court on Monday on charges of child rape. Police identified him as a person of interest after a woman was shot dead at the end of a school day at Wiley Elementary in West Richland, Benton County, Washington. West Richland PD said in a statement that officers were called at 3:23 p.m. on Monday and that, quote, 1 adult female was pronounced deceased at the scene outside of the school. The victim was not identified. The shooter fled the scene and no one else was injured at the school, and no one else was injured as the school was placed into lockdown, police said, adding that at this point it was thought to be an isolated incident. But later, on Monday night, police said the body of a second woman was found at Elias's home after they had obtained a search warrant. No information was given about this woman except that she was, quote, a known associate of the suspect. Washington State Patrol put out an Amber Alert for Roman H., Elias's son, described as 2 feet in height with brown hair and brown eyes. Elias H. himself is described as 5'6" with brown hair, brown eyes, and driving a silver 2009 Toyota Corolla. The alert said he was, quote, possibly headed for Mexico and urged anyone who saw him to call 911. He appeared in court on February 15th accused of child rape, where a lawyer entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. Documents seen by this news agency said that Elias is alleged to have sexually assaulted a teenager while she was sleeping in his home in February of this year. This was witnessed and reported by another teenager. No contact orders were issued for the alleged victims in this case, who were described as teenagers, meaning Elias cannot go within 1,000 feet of their schools, homes, or workplaces, or have any contact with any minor under 16. To end, the Yakima Police Department told KNDU News that Elias H. was an officer there from 2013 to 2022. End quote. And now that I think about it, it has been about a week since I read this initial article, so if you bear with me, maybe I'll have an update for you. Quick, let me look real quick. Okay, all right. We have a major update. Let me just read you this brief little piece from the New York Post. So, all right. The ex-Washington State school cop, Elias H., accused of gunning down his ex-wife and underage girlfriend, which was one of the unidentified victims, he killed himself in front of his infant son after a chaotic standoff with police on Friday. Not on Friday, on Tuesday. Elias was trying to outrun Oregon State troopers near Eugene on Tuesday, almost 24 hours after police launched a manhunt for this alleged double murderer, So literally a day after I tried to record this the first time. Crap. The former school resource officer topped speeds of 100 miles per hour during the chase with his kid before crashing into a highway median, according to troopers. He then exchanged gunfire with the officers before peeling off again, only to crash into a semi-truck further down the interstate. That's when the alleged killer turned the gun on himself, firing one round into his head. Elias was pronounced dead at the scene. Quote, "Since the start, our goal has been simply to bring Roman home safely, his son, and we've done that. Roman is safe and in the care of Oregon officials, and he is doing well," end quote. Woo! All right. So I'm glad I Googled that. Okay. Big twist of events. I wrote here for the previous week, go get him, boys, but he got himself. All right. That'll about do it, y'all. Again, thank you so much for listening in today. I truly appreciate it. I don't know why, there was a big spike of listeners last week. Thank you. Thank you all. Shout out to my Iceland listeners today. And with that, I will see you later. Okie dokie. Bye-bye. Love you. Alright, don't fucking press delete. Press save, Eli, you dipshit.